Hi, Professor Wills here. We're continuing with our modern art class, examining something called Neo-Dada in American art. And I know we've already explored the Dada movement both in Europe and America, and understand some of the characteristics of it. Well, it's influencing mid-century American artists. And we're going to meet a couple of them who employ really interesting techniques that are further blurring the lines between, what used to be distinctly painting, distinctly collage, or distinctly sculpture. We're starting to see a lot of blurring the lines, a lot of mixing of techniques, as well as some of the sort of found objects associated with Dada. They're also, these artists, interested in powerful signs or emblems found in the everyday. So that's the connection to pop art. We're not quite there with American pop art, but this Neo-Dada movement is like a forerunner of it, using kind of popular culture as a reference points to other ideas and concepts. So let's meet Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns. All right, get that PowerPoint ready for you. Expand that window. Here we are. All right, so we are beginning with Robert Rauschenberg, and what we see here on the left and above, it's the same work of art. It's called Monogram from 1959. It's a combine painting using oil and collage with objects. So I'll explain what combine is in just a second. Robert Rauschenberg was from Texas, and after serving in World War II, he benefited from his GI Bill to attend art school in both Kansas and then, of course, at the Black Mountain College, which was a big destination in the 1950s for progressive-minded art students. He was also majorly impacted by the work of Marcel Duchamp, collecting objects from life and using them in collage and assemblage. So along with Jasper Johns, whom we'll meet in a few minutes, Rauschenberg is often considered a forerunner of what would become American pop art, using assemblage and collage with these found objects from modern life to such an extent that they are referred to as Neo-Dada artists. Monogram doesn't have any unifying theme. As you can see here, it's both a horizontal painting, almost looking like a platform, for this sculptural element on the top. The sculptural element is a stuffed goat with a car tire wrapped around it, with additional kind of gestural paintwork, very kind of an homage to abstract expressionism on its face. Below here we have a mix of collage and assemblage and painting. Rauschenberg called combining all of these techniques literally a combine, his term for the assimilation of all of them together. Of course, we've seen this in other works, particularly during the Dada movement. But Rauschenberg is unique in that he's really expanding the spatial expression of an artwork, both vertically and horizontally. The title of the artwork, Monogram, came from the way the goat looks with this circular tire wrapped around it. It looks a lot like the monograms of a lot of companies they do, where letters of the alphabet are woven into other elements. You can think of monograms for the automobile industry, sports teams, that kind of thing, in kind of a mascot-y way. Monogram becomes, for Rauschenberg, a multi-year series. There are 3 that exist, and he continued to explore this in various stages. The one we're looking at is the 3rd stage. Some say even showing the goat with a tire makes an environmental statement about the industrial world represented by the tire and the automobile industry versus the natural world represented by the goat. In addition, others have suggested that as a gay man, Rauschenberg may have been playing with the idea of goats being used as sacrifices going back to biblical times. Homophobia was extreme in the 1950s and 60s when one could actually be persecuted for your sexual preference. So was this really a scapegoat that we're seeing here? And if so, what does this mean? There is literally a turd at the base of the painting. Is it some kind of irreverent statement on the part of the artist? I'll let you think about that. All right, let's move on to Jasper Johns. Adjusting my viewing window here for you all. All right, I think that'll work. Very good. All right, this is the title. It's easy to remember. It is Jasper Johns' flag from 1954 to 55, made up of encaustic oil and collage on fabric mounted on plywood. According to a quote by Jasper Johns, "One night I dreamed that I painted a large American flag. And the next morning I got up and I went out and bought the materials to begin it." There's probably nothing more recognizable than the American flag. Here he uses, again, this mixed media, mixed technique approach using plywood, strips of newspaper, and encaustic paint. Encaustic is a mixture of pigment and molten wax that he could build up in a sculptural way. It's an ancient technique that goes all the way back to the ancient Egyptians, and it made a comeback in the early 20th century. Here Johns uses it in layers, and it adds also a sculptural relief quality to his paintings. Wax, as we know, is also somewhat translucent. So even when colored or pigmented, you can see, if you were to see particularly this artwork in person, the layers of newspaper scraps visible beneath or embedded in the encaustic material itself. So his technique of collage and sculpture and painting, all these layers, if you were to view this artwork from the side, it would be a built up, almost impasto kind of look, representing layers like the layers of our American history. Yet Johns is also playing with ambiguity and representation here, a little bit like René Magritte did with that painting of his famous pipe. Flag constitutes both the thing, parentheses, a flag, and its representation, parentheses, a painting of a flag. As one critic wrote, "Is this a flag or a painting?" Thanks for joining me.